Hello. Today I'm going to talk about Infinite Jest by David Foster Wallace. Infinite Jest is a novel by American writer David Foster Wallace. The novel has an unconventional narrative structure and includes hundreds of extensive endnotes, some with footnotes of their own. Categorized as an encyclopedic novel, Infinite Jest is featured in Time magazine's list of 100 best English-language novels published between 1923 and 2005. Literary fiction bestseller after having sold 44,000 hardcover copies in its first year of publication, the novel has since sold more than 1 million copies worldwide. I'm not entirely sure why I started reading this book. I want to say it was a Google search, or it's 1,079 pages, which I know from memory, and there's 981 pages of the actual story, and then the endnotes start at 983 and go into 1079. So that's like 96 pages, but the font is small, so you can't really compare page lengths very well there. Now, my main goal here is to try to explain the novel, mostly because I don't understand it myself. So I have here my bookmarks. At one point I needed 3. Now the first one is this is the oldest one, I think. I kept this one because on page, I believe it's 255 is what I've read, it has the order of all of the years, which was enraging when I first saw it, because I thought, oh, now I know what's happening. But then I didn't. Now the main, I guess, driving thing behind the novel is the idea of the Infinite Jest, which is a film that is so good that the people watching cannot stop watching, which eventually causes them to perish and die. So it's like a movie that makes people die in that way. It's like an entertainment. It's very fancy and good. All that. I would say the plot revolves around that. And I think that would be true, but it's not really about the film itself that's about. It's literally about everything around it, in the vaguest of terms only. Let's see, there's the Incandanza family, which is I don't know if I'm saying that right, but it's the family of the guy who made the film, and he had they had very complicated relationships with each other, just like their mom was like overly affectionate, which affected all the children in weird ways. The oldest is very kind of messed up. Well, they're all kind of messed up. But he's like a pathological liar, and he's basically Dennis Reynolds from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, in the way that he treats women, but also not like in a psychopathic way somehow. Where Dennis Reynolds has the Dennis system, whereby he manipulates women into sleeping with him. Oren just kind of gets like a kick out of doing that with married women. But I don't hate him. Hal feels like the main character, but he gets about as much attention as this dying former drug addict towards the end of the book. But Hal is a tennis player at the Enfield, the Enfield, the ETA thing. The ETA is like the tennis academy. The Enfield Tennis Academy. Yeah. And it's unclear, he gets high, I forget what he's addicted to, exactly, or if it's just the feeling of getting high and getting away with it. But so are a lot of people at the tennis academy because of sports and what sports can lead to. There's also Mario, who I forgot existed for like a good third of the book, even though there's sections about him in the first third of the book. But I just forget about him. Let's see. There's a bunch of segments about people addicted to drugs and kind of how to get to the Ennett house, which is like a halfway house for Alcoholics Anonymous type inductees, where they try to not be addicted to alcohol and drugs. One of them was very memorable, where it was like the most depressed woman ever, who like could not feel anything for anything, and generally just sucks. And it was memorable because it talked about her depression in such like a prescient way. I don't know why I said prescient. This book has a lot of big words. People that talk about online talk about in varying degrees of how complex it is. Because you'll have some people who are like, oh, this is one of the most difficult books I've ever read. It's like reading Ulysses or Gravity's Rainbow, which are books I haven't read before, but sound difficult based on the way people have talked about them. Like, oh, it's so difficult to get through. And I feel like it could have been more confusing. But the endnotes were really the confusing part about like physically reading the book. Because you're like, oh, I have to flip back and read a description of a drug every time it freaking appears. Because every single drug of any kind, you will be referred to the back of the book. I swear to God, it's like a fifth of all of the footnotes are drugs. But there will also be quote-unquote chapter length endnotes that you read, and it's like, why isn't this in the book? It feels like the narrative structure for like the main book. So it has to have a reason, because this guy couldn't have not thought of it. Is it simply due to the nature of it being a footnote? And like creating a background around this thing that you're going to forget when you read it? So what the heck is happening? All the years are, that's what I wrote on here, where they divide the years into freaking words. And I don't know what to make of it, because one of them is like, year of this thing in this year. The Yushitaya. Well, I don't dislike, but what drives me insane is I feel like I have to read the book again to understand it. And let me tell you the lengths I went to read this book. I read, I've been reading over the course of like 2 months. And the past 2 weeks I've read most of it. Because in school, my first 4 bells, I don't have any classes because my college classes don't start until the 18th. So, I've spent the first 3 hours of the day, of those periods, reading this book. And I did the math, and it pretty much 3 hours, like less than 3 hours, like understandable, oh, interruption, I have to talk to the teacher, but 3 hours every day, and I was able to read this over the course of what ended up being like 7 or 8 days, which is a lot of hours. Also takes place in the future, so it will have bits where it talks about the future stuff that they have, like, oh, this is why the years are like this. Hey, did you know Maine doesn't exist anymore because the US dumped a bunch of trash on it and then gave it to Canada, and then they became like the EU of North America with each other? I'm really kind of annoyed about this one point I've become hung up on, which is there are wheelchair assassins, And I thought a character was a wheelchair assassin, but they were like part of the unspecified services thing, which is like the secret agents, sort of, but they like combined a bunch of stuff together because they didn't know what to do with the other stuff because of weird politics that I don't remember at all. The book is interesting. I liked reading it. There were periods where I was like, oh, I could read this forever. But it was so thick and I wanted to get through it that I don't think I enjoyed it as much. Which might be a personal problem, but also it's a 1,000-page book. And I'm gonna... How many words is in it? 577,608 words. You know, my camera stopped recording, and so I don't know what I was talking about, but I think, I don't think it matters. The book is somehow funny, but also awful. There's an amazing section where we talk about a game called Eschaton, which in itself is ridiculous because it's a game about like nuclear devastation and what countries have nuclear weapons. And they go through like all the specifics of how you play the game. You have to wear hats, and there are rules. One of the characters has an equation for it. And they play the game, and there's freaking... They have tennis balls that represent nuclear weapons. At one point, one of the people throws that at another one, and so in the game, that person is dissolved and dead, which has never happened before. Also, it's snowing, and people are arguing about if the snow counts on the board of the game they're playing. And they start like pelting each other with tennis balls, and it becomes a huge problem and issue in the book. There's so much that happened, and yet not a whole lot. And when I say not a whole lot, I mean like, oh, nothing happened. I mean like, I couldn't tell you what happened exactly, but it's so detailed in a way where, this is an issue I've ran into before, where I just don't know what to listen to in the book because there's so much. Maybe that's a problem with myself, but there's so much in here that I don't know what to think about. There's some stuff I really like in the book specifically. Like, there's this one scene where two things happen that I liked. Where one, there's a character who's French but pretending to be English, or they're speaking English, and it asks how many years a guy has. And he's like, oh, do you mean how old I am? And he's like, yeah, sure. And I took French, and that's like how French people ask for age. Because people have age, they don't, they aren't a age, if that makes sense, in that language. Which, you know, he has to know French to know that, and so that's impressive. One of many details I've seen. It all was weirdly predictive of modern day somehow. I mean, obviously there's stuff where he's wrong, where like, oh, he needs the master copy of a film that by now would have been digital. I'm thinking that if I have my years right, maybe not even then, but probably would have been a digital film. Would have, I don't know what I'm saying. Like, everything is a physical tape. There's a bit where the guy's talking about, oh, there's TV, I miss TV. Because he has so many options for what he can choose, he doesn't know what he wants to choose. And it's like, that's streaming. That's right now, we have all those options for what we want to watch. How do you know? I think one of the more depressing things about the book is, but kind of fascinating, but that's not really a good term for it, I don't know what way to put it, but, the guy who wrote it was depressed and he killed himself, which makes the book so, because it reflects on that a lot, like suicide, and there are people that kill themselves, and they talk about why, and maybe why, and all this stuff. It's so weird to know that this guy did that, and the way he talked about it, and how that comes through by the end of the book. Kind of makes me think about, selfishly isn't really the right word because you're meant to reflect on yourself with things, but it makes me think of myself in a way of how I think in terms of like art making, I worry there's a limit, and I think that's why this guy killed himself, maybe. People were talking about how he lost the motivation to write, he didn't know what to write anymore. And so, like, he just died. There are points where I was thinking, oh, this is how a book is supposed to be, but at the same time, I don't know what to focus on. The novel is non-linear in a way that makes you go insane, because they will have things that happen on the same day in different places in a chapter which doesn't exist. Because there's a symbol that they'll have, which barely ever shows up in the book, where it's like a new thing is happening in a new section, but also they'll have like space in between paragraphs that does the same thing sometimes. The beginning of the book starts out in first person, which rapidly shifts over to third person, and then goes back to first person by the end of the book. Maybe there's a few sections of that in the front, but I don't remember anymore. Where it's from Hal's perspective, but then we don't get Hal's perspective. Really. It's like, it's the whole thing about Hal, in a way. And then I looked at this freaking diagram, and it confused me more. I looked at a few diagrams. There's one where it showed, like, characters, major characters. And I was like, who is that? Like, if I went in the book and I read that, I'd believe it was there, but I don't remember that character's name. Who are they? They're on the same page as all the other major characters, and so... Maybe? Because there's, like, vague details where you're like, oh, is this what happened? Is this the... And maybe it did. In the end, it's not super important. There's a section that I could not read, like, one word of, because they were trying to, like, do an accent, in a way. And I think it was supposed to be a black person's accent. I don't think the book is racist. A brutally injured former drug addict who was racist and sexist, I think. Maybe not sexist. He uses the N-word and derogatory terms for minorities in general. And he hallucinates the director of the film. There's a side character who, like, on a one-off chapter, they talk about how a person that might have been his brother, maybe, is a prostitute who was, whose father did awful things to him when he was a child, in a sexual manner. Am I allowed to... And that's awful. There's several descriptions of stuff like that. There's a bit where a father's attracted to his daughter deeply to where he treats her like a baby, so he distances himself from that. And he had also molested younger girls in the past, like her mother. And then that girl gets acid thrown on her face by her mother, and then her mother kills herself. I've been talking about this book for a while now, and about 12 minutes of it has been cut, but I did rephrase a lot of that stuff. So it's really more, it's like half an hour I've been talking about it. I still don't think I'm going to get anywhere near talking about this full book ever. One of the things I thought a lot about was, I thought, hey, maybe I can maybe not I, but someone could make like a mini-series out of this. I think, a movie might work. You have to simplify all this stuff down significantly. And I think that would almost betray some of the artistic choices done here. Where it kind of is it's a prose that makes you think about everything. And so a film which, let's say, is 3 hours, might not be able to, like, delve into everything that the book wanted to talk about. And then I thought, okay, miniseries. Well, miniseries would still lose stuff, and I don't know how you're going to order everything or where you would start or end things. There's this freaking diagram that I don't understand. And it has, like, oh, there's this character. And it's on with the whole main cast, and I'm like, who is that? I've never seen this guy before. Who are they? Why are they connected directly to the main character when I don't even remember him? And I know there's stuff like this diagram, which is like, what the heck? Where do I start? Where do I end? There are 2 endings? What's the post ending? What is all of this stuff happening? What? What do you mean that guy dies? I don't remember him dying. He was alive at the end. Was he alive at the other parts? What? I liked the book. I liked it. If someone said, oh, have you read Infinite Jest? I'd be like, yeah, I have. It's good. Kind of hard to read. But I'd be lying to them. Because it's hard to read. I don't know what people are out here saying, oh, it's so easy. Or, oh, it's not hard to read. Ulysses was harder. I was like, shut up. Sorry, you became a freaking professor and read 800 words a minute. I did one of the speed read test things, and I'm capable of reading like 800 words a minute. I mean, not naturally. Like, reading left to right, go down, left to right, left to right, left to right. Can't do that at 800 words a minute, but I'm capable, like, in the same place. I can do that. I still read this book at a rate of about 300 words a minute, which really lowers my self-confidence, because I thought I could read 500 words a minute. Not with this book. And yeah, oh, this is a special book, it has so many words in it, blah, yeah. But, counter-argument there, if I can't read this book at 500 words a minute, what's the point in reading that fast at all? I'm going to think about this book for a long time. It's possible I might read it again someday. I think if I end up being able to read, like, much faster, at better comprehension, I think I'll definitely read the book again. What I find very concerning is stuff like this, where how do you get that many bookmarks in there? What is there to mark? What's all this different? What does this mean? What does that mean? Why'd the Joker read it in the Harley Quinn series that I haven't watched yet, but I've heard it is good? Why? I think that's the large question there. Which is sort of like, why do we read or do anything, really? Is it to, like, entertain ourselves? But why? Why do we need entertainment? Is it to simply distract from life? What about, even in this book, we have things that are ultimately unpleasant. So in that way, are we using it to become better people? And how is that becoming better, do you think? I think people have definitions of what being a human is that I often kind of disagree with because animals can do it, and I think maybe that's just the spontaneous part of being when it comes to life. Because, we don't know how life, like, literally started. Like, how the thing start moving and respond to things and have, we don't really know exactly how that happened. Maybe it's like souls, maybe it's God, who knows. But, I think maybe that's like just a property of you need to survive and do things to live, but you also do things that you don't need to do. I often think about the Understanding Comics example where he shows like a caveman and he's like trying to sexually assault a cave woman because he needs to reproduce. That's something he needs. And then he gets distracted by like a pig. He runs after that. He needs to eat that. Then he runs away from like a wolf. Oh, he can't die. He needs to run away from that. And like he makes the wolf fall off. Wolf. I don't know if it's a wolf. I don't remember the example. Makes the wolf run off, and what does he do? Is he gonna go find more food? Is he gonna try to get a mate? No, he's gonna make fun of the wolf rather than falling off of the thing. And that's art. Is that really art, or is it just the expression? And art is what results from expression. And we express in order to, in a way, develop our own thoughts and feelings on something, but also to kind of aid in other people's, and by people observing what we have made, they have bettered themselves. I don't really know what else I really need to say about the book. I liked it. I should cut that. That shouldn't be in the video.